Nothing hurts more than watching your own family mock your misfortune. That's exactly what happened when substitute teacher Liam Thorne inherited a ruined mansion. His ex-in-laws called it Liam's money pit. His own siblings wondered how he could afford to tear it down. The crumbling doors of Walter Vance Manor, with its shattered window panes and a cold 90-day demolition notice, seemed to mock his destitution. As Liam, along with the dreamy Chloe and practical Ethan, began to unravel the mysteries beneath the peeling wallpaper, they realized they weren't just cleaning up an abandoned house, but uncovering clues to a mystery that had waited over a century to be solved. But would what this family discovered within those forgotten walls be enough to save them all? Before we continue the story, let us know where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, don't forget to subscribe, because tomorrow I've prepared something even more special for you. The piercing bell signaling the end of the school day rang out, concluding a weary day. Liam Thorne, 54, wearily gathered the stack of old textbooks on his teacher's desk. His worn suit seemed out of place in the noisy world of middle schoolers. He tried to raise his voice above the murmuring, "Remember to do page 72, class," but no one paid him any mind. This morning, the principal had called him into the office, placed a cold cup of tea in front of him, and said with a sympathetic tone, "Mr. Liam, we're very sorry. Parents have complained that you are not dynamic enough and do not effectively use new educational technology software. We will not be able to extend your substitute teaching contract." Not dynamic enough. That phrase echoed in Liam's mind on the way back to his cramped rented apartment. He was tired, he was a widower, and now he was unemployed. He trudged back to his cramped rented apartment, where Liam found a lawyer's sealed letter on the doormat. He opened it, his tired eyes scanning the lines of text. His great-uncle Carlos had passed away and left him all his assets. Walter Vance Manor. A thin ray of hope, a feeling Liam had long forgotten, began to glimmer. Could this be the salvation he had been waiting for? A few days later, that ray of hope was mercilessly extinguished. It shattered like the window panes of Walter Vance Manor itself. The morning sun cast long shadows across the overgrown driveway. Liam's old pickup truck rattled as he turned into a narrow lane, shaded by ancient oak trees. As Liam stood before the iron gates of Walter Vance Manor, a crumpled demolition notice in his weathered hands. At 52, he carried the weight of a man who had spent decades teaching other people's children while struggling to provide for his own. His graying hair caught the light as he gazed at the mansion that had become both his inheritance and his burden. And most alarmingly, tacked directly onto the rusty iron gate, was a blood-red sign with the stark words, 90-day demolition notice. Well, Ethan, Liam's 16-year-old son, scoffed with undisguised sarcasm. He crossed his arms, leaning against the truck. "We're rich now, Dad. We own an expensive pile of firewood. Dad, are we sure we should go in there?" Chloe's voice carried the cautious curiosity of an 11-year-old who had learned to accept disappointment. She clutched her worn backpack, filled with the sketchbooks and colored pencils that were always with her. Despite their financial struggles, Chloe maintained an optimism that reminded Liam of his own youth before life taught him to expect less. Ethan, with the wry humor that came from watching his father struggle, kicked at a loose stone in the driveway. "It's not like we have anywhere else to go," he muttered, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of curiosity at the towering, antiquated structure before them. The teenager had inherited his father's dark eyes and his mother's sharp intelligence, along with a protective instinct that made him seem older than his years. Liam said nothing. He just stared at the dilapidated structure, feeling as if a heavy stone was pressing against his chest. This was not salvation, this was a curse. Ring, ring. His phone vibrated loudly. The screen displayed group call, Sophia and Daniel. He took a deep breath and answered, "Liam." His older sister Sophia's voice rang out, sharp as a razor. "Heard you inherited a palace. Congratulations, finally got some land to call your own. Must be spacious, huh?" Liam could hear Daniel's chuckle on the other end. "I looked it up online," Daniel interjected. "That palace has been on the market several times, but no one's bought it. Demolition and repair costs must be hefty." "Where are you going to get the money, unemployed teacher?" The derision in their voices made Liam's throat dry. "You two, forget it." Sophia cut him off impatiently. "Listen to me. Try to sell the land. Salvage whatever you can. Don't cling to pipe dreams anymore. You're not young enough to dream. Raising 2 kids is exhausting enough." The call ended, leaving a heavy silence, more painful than the words themselves. Liam looked at his 2 children, then at his inheritance. He felt trapped. The burden of a failed father, the scorn of his family, and now a crumbling mansion. For a fleeting moment, he just wanted to turn the car around and drive away, forgetting everything. Liam turned away, quietly pulling his worn leather wallet from his back pocket. He opened it, not to find money, but to look at a faded, yellowed photograph. In the picture, his late wife, Caroline, smiled radiantly, holding their 2 small children. Her smile seemed to light up the whole world. A dull ache and a wave of guilt washed over him. He whispered, low enough for only himself to hear, "I'm sorry, Caroline. I've let you down, and now I'm letting the kids down." He looked up, from the radiant smile in the photo to the desolate ruins before him. The weight seemed to double. But then he saw Chloe's eyes sparkling with belief in miracles. And he knew, at least for her sake, he couldn't give up. Liam pushed the rusty gates open, their hinges groaning in protest. The sound echoed across the 3-acre property, disturbing a flock of crows that had nested in the ancient oak trees lining the entrance. "Your great-uncle Carlos wasn't much for upkeep," he said, trying to sound light-hearted for his children. The mansion loomed before them, a testament to the ambition of another era. Built in 1898 by railroad tycoon Silas Blackwood, the 3-story Victorian estate had once been the jewel of the small town of Millbrook. Now, ivy strangled its ornate turrets, and several windows on the upper floors were boarded up with weathered plywood. The wraparound porch sagged under the weight of neglect, and paint peeled from the elaborate gingerbread trim like old skin. "It's bigger than I thought," Chloe whispered, her initial caution forgotten. She walked towards the staircase, her fingers tracing the carved newel post. "It's like a castle, Dad." Ethan's skepticism wavered as he took in the sheer scale of the mansion. "How many rooms are in this place?" 17, Liam replied, reviewing the property map, not counting the servants' quarters or the basement. They moved through the ground floor, their footsteps echoing in the empty rooms. The formal dining room featured a massive stone fireplace and built-in china cabinets. The walls of the library were lined with empty bookshelves, though a few leather-bound tomes still lay scattered on the floor. The kitchen, clearly added during a 1,950 renovation, looked like a museum exhibit of mid-century appliances. In what had once been the parlor, Chloe discovered a faded family portrait leaning against the wall. The image showed a distinguished man in his 40s, a woman in an elegant gown, and 2 young children, a boy and a girl, posed formally in front of the mansion's main entrance. The photo was sepia-toned and cracked with age, but the faces of the subjects were still clear. "That must be Silas Blackwood and his family," Liam said, taking the portrait from his daughter's hand. "Harold mentioned him in his letter. He built this place after making his fortune in the railroad business." "What happened to them?" Chloe asked, studying the faces with the same intense focus she typically reserved for her art projects. "Your great-uncle didn't say much about it, just that the family left town abruptly around the 1930s. The house has been vacant ever since, except for Uncle Carlos living in the caretaker's cottage." Ethan joined them, his curiosity rising despite himself. Why would anyone abandon a place like this? "The Great Depression hit a lot of wealthy families hard," Liam explained. "Perhaps they lost their money and couldn't afford to maintain it." As they explored the upper floors, the mansion's problems became even more apparent. Water damage had warped the hardwood floors in several bedrooms. The plumbing was ancient, and the electrical system looked like it hadn't been updated since the 1940 seconds. In the master bedroom, a section of the ceiling had collapsed, revealing rotting wooden beams and water-stained insulation. "Dad," Ethan said quietly, "we can't afford to fix all this." Liam nodded, his heart heavy with the weight of reality. "I know, son, but maybe we can find a way to make it work, at least temporarily." They spent the afternoon taking inventory of the mansion's condition, making lists of urgent repairs, and dreaming of what the place could become. Chloe filled her sketchbook with drawings of the rooms, imagining how they would look when restored. Ethan, despite his skepticism, found himself calculating the costs of various repairs, his mathematical mind drawn to the challenge of making the numbers work. Not far away, hidden behind a thicket of old oak trees, a sleek, black luxury car sat silently, almost invisible in the shade. Inside, a mysterious man raised high-tech binoculars to his eyes, observing the Thorne family intently. The image of the three of them was clear in his sights. On a tablet placed on the passenger seat, a complex diagram of Walter Vance Manor was displayed. Red dots blinked continuously at various locations within the building, like marked targets. The man lowered his binoculars, a sinister, calculating smile spreading across his face. He was not in a hurry. He had been waiting for this for a very long time. The car quietly reversed, without a sound, then slowly merged into the shadows of the trees, disappearing from sight. The Thorne family remained there, caught between Ethan's skepticism and Chloe's hope, under Liam's burden. They were completely unaware that they were being watched, and a dangerous enemy had just made his first move. As evening approached, they prepared to leave, but Liam lingered in the front hall, studying the family portrait they had found. There was something in Silas Blackwood's expression that intrigued him, a look of determination mixed with worry, as if the man had faced impossible challenges of his own. "Dad," Chloe's voice cut through his thoughts. "Are we really going to try and save this place?" Liam looked at his daughter, seeing in her face the same hope and determination that had once propelled him to become a teacher, despite his family's doubts. "We're going to try, sweetheart. I can't promise we'll succeed, but we're going to try." As they walked back to their modest apartment on the other side of town, Liam's phone vibrated with messages from his siblings. Sophia had found a demolition company willing to work cheaply. Daniel had researched the property's appraised value and concluded that the land was worth more than the building. Even his father had sent a message, suggesting they be realistic about the situation. But as Liam tucked his children into bed that night, he found himself not thinking about the mansion's problems, but about its possibilities. For the first time in years, he had something that was his own, something that wasn't second-hand or a compromise. The mansion might be falling apart, but it was his to save or lose. That night, as he lay on his narrow bed in his cramped apartment, Liam made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow he would begin the impossible task of bringing Walter Vance Manor back to life. He did not know how, and he could not fail, but he would try. Because sometimes a man needs something bigger than himself to fight for, even if everyone else thinks he's fighting a losing battle. The faded family portrait lay on his nightstand, Silas Blackwood's determined expression seemingly watching him in the darkness. And in that moment, Liam felt a connection to the long-dead railroad tycoon. Two men, a century apart, united by a willingness to stake everything on an impossible dream. Deciding to stay at Vance Manor sounded crazy, but at least they wouldn't have to pay rent anymore. Though the roof had several leaks and the wind whistled through broken windows, forcing them to wear extra jackets even indoors. 3 days later, Liam arrived at the mansion with a toolbox borrowed from a neighbor and a determination that was both foolish and necessary. The morning air carried the scent of autumn leaves and the faint promise of rain. Chloe and Ethan stood beside him as he unlocked the front door, their weekend transformed into an unexpected adventure. On their first night, The sounds of the old house kept no one sleeping soundly. The floorboards creaked as if someone were walking around. The wind whistled through cracks like moans, and most annoyingly, the steady drip, drip, drip of water leaking from the kitchen like a countdown clock to the demolition day. "Dad can't call a plumber," Liam said wearily one morning. "They'd charge a fortune." Ethan, with his practical nature and intolerance for noise, decided to take matters into his own hands. He pulled out an old toolkit and started tinkering. After some fiddling, he identified the problem. "Where should we start?" Chloe asked. Her notebook opened to a new page where she had sketched a map of the mansion's ground floor. "The kitchen," Liam decided. "If we can get the plumbing working, we'll have a place to clean up and maybe even make some basic repairs." The sink hadn't worked in years, the faucet was corroded, and the pipes underneath were clogged with debris. As Liam wrestled with the antiquated plumbing, Ethan explored the adjacent pantry, his flashlight beam piercing the gloom. "Dad!" Ethan called out from the small, cramped pantry next to the kitchen. "This damned pipe goes straight into the wall. I think I'll have to make a hole to see what's going on." Ethan called out, his voice echoing in the confined space. Liam looked up from the jumble of pipes. "What do you mean? Come here and see." Liam wiped his hands on his jeans and joined his son in the kitchen. Ethan's flashlight illuminated a section of the wall that looked different from the rest. The wallpaper peeled more here, and the surface underneath seemed uneven. "It looks like something is pushing out from behind the wallpaper," Ethan observed, running his fingers along the raised sections. Chloe squeezed in beside them, her curiosity overcoming her caution. "Can we peel it off and see what's underneath?" Liam hesitated. The wallpaper was already damaged, and they were planning to renovate anyway. "I suppose a look won't hurt." The small room smelled musty and contained only a few empty shelves. Ethan took a hammer and lightly tapped the wall covered in faded, flowered wallpaper. Thump, thump. A brittle piece of wallpaper, aged by time, flaked off and fluttered to the floor. But what was revealed underneath was not brick or mortar as they had expected. It was a dark, carved wooden surface. "What is this?" Chloe asked curiously, stepping forward and using her small fingers to peel away another section of paper. As if drawn in, all three of them worked together to strip away the old covering of time. More and more wallpaper fell, revealing an astonishing secret. The entire wall, from floor to ceiling, was an intricate carving. Interlocking gears, swirling constellations, strange mathematical symbols, and complex geometric patterns were meticulously etched. It was as if the mind of a genius inventor was laid bare before them. And right in the center of the wall, an inscription stood out prominently, challenging them. "Begin." All three stood speechless. Ethan was the first to break the silence. He rolled his eyes, letting out a frustrated sigh. "Dad, that's enough. We're not characters in a treasure hunt movie. These are just some silly drawings by an eccentric old man. This house is just a pile of junk. We should sell it and clear our debts before we get thrown out." "No!" Chloe almost shrieked, her eyes shining, her hand gently tracing the cool carvings. "Don't you see? This is a map, a secret. I can feel it." "Feel it?" Ethan scoffed. "Feelings don't pay bills, Chloe." A small but tense argument broke out. Ethan, with his practical mind, only saw the immediate problems: a crumbling house, an unemployed father, and an uncertain future. Chloe, with an artist's soul, saw an adventure, a promise of wonders hidden beneath the dust of time. Liam stood between his two children, feeling torn. His reason agreed with Ethan. They were in an incredibly difficult situation, but his heart, a part of it calloused by weariness, was stirred by Chloe's fierce belief. He looked at the inscription, "Begin," and for the first time in years, instead of feeling burdened, he felt an urge, a flicker of curiosity that had long been dormant. He placed one hand on Ethan's shoulder and the other on Chloe's head. "We'll try," Liam decided, his voice firmer than he expected. "We'll see where this secret leads. Just a little. If there's nothing, we'll listen to you, Ethan. Deal?" Ethan was still skeptical, but he nodded. Chloe let out a joyful cry and hugged her father. That day, in the musty pantry, Under the dim light of a bare bulb, the Thorne family made a choice. They didn't know that this decision to just try a little would change their lives forever. The adventure had truly begun. "It's like a treasure map," Ethan said, his teenage skepticism battling with genuine excitement. Liam traced one of the symbols with his finger. The wood was smooth, worn glossy by time and wear. "These aren't random. Someone spent a lot of time creating this." "Silas Blackwood," Chloe suggested, remembering the portrait they had found. Maybe Uncle Carlos never mentioned anything like this, but then again, maybe he never looked behind the wallpaper. They spent the next hour examining the carvings, taking pictures, and sketching. The symbols seemed to follow a pattern, but their meaning eluded immediate grasp. Some resembled astronomical symbols, others looked like geometric proofs, and still others appeared to be a form of code. "We need to research this," Liam finally said. "There might be archives at the library or historical society." As they prepared to leave the kitchen, Chloe noticed something else. "Dad, look." She pointed to a small section of carved text at the very bottom of the wall, almost obscured by shadow. Liam knelt down and read the words aloud. "For those who seek what is lost, the path begins with understanding the past." "That's definitely a clue," Ethan said. His earlier skepticism had been replaced by genuine curiosity. The drive to the Millbrook Public Library was filled with excited speculation. Chloe sat in the back seat sketching symbols from memory, while Ethan researched Silas Blackwood on his phone. "Listen to this," Ethan said, reading from a genealogy website. Silas Blackwood was born in 1854, made his fortune in railroad investments, and built the mansion in 1898. He was known for his eccentric personality and a passion for puzzles and codes. "Puzzles and codes," Liam repeated. "Exactly. It says here he was a member of several intellectual societies and was famous for creating elaborate riddles for his friends. He even published a book on cryptography in 1925. The local history section of the library was located in a quiet corner of the building, overseen by Mrs. Julian, an elderly librarian who had worked there for over 30 years. As Liam explained what they were looking for, her eyes lit up with interest. "Silas Blackwood," she mused, pulling several thick books from the shelves. "That's a name I haven't heard in a while. He was quite a character from what I've read." The books contained photos of the mansion in its heyday, society pages from local newspapers, and business records from Blackwood's various enterprises. But it was a 1,929 newspaper article that truly caught Liam's attention. "Railroad Tycoon Vanishes." The headline read, "Local millionaire Silas Blackwood and family disappear without a trace." According to the article, the Blackwood family had left town abruptly in October 1929, just days before the stock market crashed, triggering the Great Depression. Their departure was so sudden that they left behind servants, unpaid bills, and a fully furnished mansion. "That's strange," Liam murmured. "If he left in such a hurry, why would he have time to carve all those symbols?" "Mrs. Julian leaned over their shoulders, studying the article. "There were rumors, you know. People said he saw the crash coming and had prepared for it. Some thought he'd hidden his fortune somewhere before he left." "Hidden fortune?" Chloe asked. "Just local lore," Mrs. Julian said with a smile. "Every old mansion has its buried treasure stories, but Silas Blackwood was famous for his love of puzzles. If anyone would create an elaborate treasure hunt, it would be him." They spent the rest of the afternoon researching, photocopying relevant documents, and building a portrait of Silas Blackwood as a man who had anticipated economic disaster and had taken steps to protect his assets. The more they learned, the more the carved symbols seemed like more than just decoration. As they drove home, Liam's phone rang. It was his sister, Sophia. "Liam, I've been thinking about that mansion," she said without preamble. "Daniel and I want to help you with the demolition costs. We can't let you ruin yourself over this." "I'm not going to demolish it," Liam replied. "Don't be silly. You can't afford to renovate that place. Be realistic. I found something today that might change everything. What? Liam glanced at his children, both listening intently. I'm not sure yet, but I think Uncle Carlos's inheritance might be worth more than we thought. Liam, please tell me you're not chasing some pipe dream about hidden treasure. I'm chasing the possibility that there's more to this mansion than meets the eye. Sophia sighed. You're setting yourself up for disappointment. And more importantly, you're setting the kids up for disappointment. After hanging up, Liam sat in his car outside their apartment building, staring at the photos they had taken of the carved symbols. Chloe and Ethan waited patiently, sensing their father's internal struggle. Dad, Chloe finally said, are we going to try and solve it? Liam looked at his daughter's hopeful face, then at Ethan's carefully neutral expression. They had so little in their lives that was truly their own. The mansion might be falling apart, but it was theirs, and now it might hold secrets that could change everything. Yes, he said, surprised by the conviction in his voice. We're going to try and solve it. As they climbed the stairs to their apartment, Liam felt something he hadn't experienced in years. The thrill of a mystery waiting to be unraveled. The carved symbols were not merely decoration. They were Silas Blackwood's gift to the future, a puzzle that had waited nearly a century for the right people to find it. That night, as Liam tucked his children into bed, Chloe asked the question that was on all their minds. Dad, what if we actually find something? Liam smiled, recalling the determination in Silas Blackwood's carved words. Then we'll prove that sometimes the impossible is just something no one else was brave enough to try. Outside their windows, the lights of Millbrook twinkled in the darkness, and somewhere on the other side of town, Walter Vance Manor waited in the shadows, keeping its secrets for another day. The next Saturday morning brought uninvited guests to Walter Vance Manor. Liam was teaching Chloe how to use a level when the sound of car doors slamming echoed from the driveway. Through the front window, he saw his siblings, Sophia and Daniel, stepping out of Sophia's brand-new Mercedes, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Great, Ethan muttered from his spot near the carved wall, where he was photographing the symbols from various angles. The cavalry has arrived. Behave, Liam warned. Although he felt his own tension rising, he had hoped for more time to make progress before facing his family's scrutiny. Sophia entered the front hall with the confidence of someone accustomed to appraising properties. Her heels clicked on the worn hardwood floors as she surveyed the mansion's interior with a discerning eye. Daniel followed behind, his insurance executive instincts immediately categorizing potential liability issues. My goodness, Liam, Sophia gasped, taking in the scale of the mansion. This place is massive. There are 17 rooms in total, Chloe proudly declared, appearing beside her aunt, plus secret passages. Secret passages? Daniel raised an eyebrow. Chloe, this isn't a fairy tale. Come and see, Chloe pleaded, leading them towards the pantry where the carved symbols awaited. Sophia's reaction was immediate and decisive. Liam, these are just old decorations. They might be valuable to an antique dealer, but hardly a reason for you to go bankrupt renovating this place. They're not decorations, Ethan said, his voice defensive. They're a puzzle. We've been researching Silas Blackwood. He was famous for creating codes and puzzles. Daniel examined the symbols with the skepticism of a man who dealt in facts and figures. Even if they are some kind of puzzle, what makes you think it leads to anything valuable? Because of this, Liam said, showing them the newspaper article about Blackwood's sudden disappearance. He left town right before the stock market crashed. A man with his resources doesn't just vanish without a plan. Or perhaps he went broke like everyone else and couldn't face the shame. Sophia countered, Liam, you're chasing a fairy tale. Their discussion was interrupted by another arrival. A sleek black sedan pulled up outside, and a man in an expensive suit stepped out. He was tall and slender with silver hair and an air of confident success emanating from competitive fields. Mr. Thorne, the man extended his hand as he approached the front door. I'm Alistair Crowe. I hope you don't mind the intrusion. but I heard about your inheritance and wanted to make an offer. Liam shook his hand cautiously. What kind of offer? A generous one. I'll buy all the damaged assets, and I'm prepared to pay above market value for the land. Cash, quick close, no inspections needed. The house is not for sale, Liam said. Crow's smile didn't waver. I understand you're facing a demolition order. That's costly. Not to mention the expense of maintaining a large property like this. I can solve all your problems with a single check. Sophia stepped forward, her business instincts kicking in. What kind of offer are we talking about? $500,000 for the property as is, Crow said smoothly. That's more than generous considering the condition and the pending demolition order. $500,000, Daniel whistled softly. Liam, that's more than you'd make in 10 years. The property is not for sale, Liam repeated, but his voice lacked conviction. Think about your children, Crow continued, his voice becoming more persuasive. That kind of money could pay for their college tuition, set them up for success. What can this old house give them besides debt? Thank you for your very generous offer, Mr. Crow, Liam replied, trying to keep his voice calm, but I think we'll hold on to it, for now at least. Crow's smile stiffened for a second, but he quickly regained his friendly demeanor. Of course, your choice. But if you change your mind, here's my card. Is Dad crazy? Ethan exclaimed as soon as the car was out of sight. $500,000. We could start over. Why did he refuse? Chloe moved closer to her father, her small hand taking his. Dad, we want to solve the puzzle. Crow's smile faltered for just a moment. What puzzle? Nothing, Sophia quickly interjected. Just kids' imagination, you know. But Crow's gaze had sharpened with interest. I've heard stories about this place, local legends about hidden treasure. Surely you don't believe them. Of course not, Daniel chimed in. We're realists. After Crow left, promising to keep his offer open, the family stood in an awkward silence. The developer's visit had changed the dynamic, making the mansion's problems more urgent and the promise of the puzzle more elusive. Liam, Sophia gently said, $500,000 would change your life. I know. Your children would have security, college funds, a future. You know, then why aren't you considering it? Liam looked around the front hall, at the dusty grandeur surrounding them. Because this is the first thing I've ever owned that no one else chose for me. The first thing that is mine to save or lose. You're being selfish, Daniel said bluntly. This isn't just about you. You have a responsibility. I am thinking about my responsibility, Liam replied, his voice growing stronger. I'm thinking about teaching my children that sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in, even when everyone else thinks you're crazy. The argument would have continued, but Chloe's voice cut through the tension. I've solved part of it. Everyone turned to look at her. She stood by the carved wall, her notebook open, comparing her sketches to the symbols. It's not just a puzzle, she explained, her young voice filled with excitement. It's a series of puzzles. Each symbol is a clue to the next step. And this one, she pointed to a circular pattern near the center of the wall. It's a map of the mansion itself. A map? Liam knelt beside his daughter, studying her work. See, the circles match the floor plan. The large circle is the main hall. The smaller ones are the rooms. And these lines, she traced the intricate carved lines with her finger. They show secret passages between the rooms. Ethan joined them, his skepticism replaced by a grudging admiration for his sister's observation. She's right. Look, you can see the outline of the staircase here, and the kitchen is marked by this symbol that looks like a fireplace. If there are secret passages, Liam said slowly, then there might be secret rooms too. Sophia shook her head. Even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that you can't afford to renovate this place. But what if we find something that makes it worth renovating? Chloe asked. Like what? Like whatever Silas Blackwood hid. Daniel checked his watch. I hate to break up this treasure hunt, but I have to go home. Liam, promise me you'll think about Alistair Crow's offer. I'll think about it, Liam agreed, though his gaze remained fixed on his daughter's drawings. After his siblings left, Liam sat on the front porch with his children, watching the sun set over the overgrown property. The mansion loomed behind them, its windows dark and mysterious. "Dad," Ethan said, "do you really think we can solve this?" "I think we can try," Liam replied, "and sometimes trying is enough. Even if we don't find any treasure," Liam considered the question, "even then, because the real treasure isn't what we might find, but what we're learning about ourselves while looking for it." As they prepared to leave, Chloe made one last discovery. "Dad, Ethan, look." She pointed to her sketch. "I figured it out. These carvings, they're not just a regular map. It's a diagram of our own house. Look, here's the dining room, there's the main hall, and it points to a secret passage, right in our own library. Hidden in a corner of the carved wall, so small it was almost imperceptible, was a tiny arrow pointing towards the library. Beneath it, a line of text so faint it was barely legible, were the words, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. That's our next clue," she triumphantly declared. Liam smiled, feeling a purpose he hadn't experienced in years. Tomorrow they would explore the library, following the trail Silas Blackwood had left for them. Tonight, however, he would dream of possibilities instead of limitations, of mysteries instead of bills, of a future built on courage instead of compromise. The mansion stood silently in the darkness, holding its secrets for another day. But change was coming to Walter Vance Manor, driven by the hopes and determination of a father who had finally found something worth fighting for. Immediately after Chloe's discovery, all three rushed to the mansion's library. The library at Walter Vance Manor was once Silas Blackwood's sanctuary, and even in its current state of neglect, traces of its former grandeur remained. Built-in bookshelves lined three walls from floor to ceiling, their cherry wood dulled by decades of dust, yet still bearing the imprint of a bygone era. A large desk dominated the center of the room, its leather top cracked and faded, but still imposing. Liam carried a toolbox and cleaning supplies while his children brought their notebooks, cameras, and a determination to uncover the next piece of Silas Blackwood's puzzle. "The arrow points this way," Chloe said, referencing her sketches as they entered the library. "So the next clue must be somewhere in here." The room felt different from the rest of the mansion, more intimate, more personal. Books lay scattered where they had fallen from shelves, their pages yellowed with time. A globe on a brass stand rested in one corner, its surface displaying countries and borders that no longer existed. "The map points here," Chloe whispered, pointing to a bookshelf in the corner of the room. They began their search, running their hands over the spines of hundreds of books. Ethan, with his practical mind, checked for hidden mechanisms behind the shelves. Liam tapped each book, hoping for a hollow sound. But it was Chloe, with an artist's eye, who noticed something different. "Look at this," Ethan called from behind the desk. He had opened the drawers and found them filled with papers, maps, and what appeared to be business correspondence. "There's so much here." Liam joined his son, lifting out stacks of documents. Most were ordinary business papers, railroad contracts, investment records, correspondence with banks and partners. But mixed among them were more personal items, family photographs, letters from Silas's wife, and what appeared to be pages from a personal journal. "Dad, listen to this," Ethan said, reading from a letter dated September 1929. "My dearest Sarah, I fear our comfortable world is about to collapse. The signs are everywhere for those who know how to read them. I have made certain preparations, though I pray I am wrong about what is to come." "He saw the crash coming," Chloe said, looking up from her exploration of the bookshelves. "Just like the article said." "There's more," Ethan continued reading. "I have created a path for future generations to follow, should they prove worthy of the treasure I have hidden. The path is not for the lazy or the foolish, but for those who value knowledge and perseverance over mere wealth." Liam stopped sorting papers. "He really did hide something, and he wanted it to be found," Chloe added, "but only by the right person." As they continued their search, Liam found himself drawn to a particular section of the bookshelf. Unlike the others, this shelf held books that seemed to be intentionally arranged, not in alphabetical order or by subject, but in a pattern that suggested intent. The books were of various sizes and colors, but they created a visual rhythm that captured his attention. "Chloe, come look at this," he called. His daughter approached, her artistic eye immediately recognizing what he had seen. They're arranged by color and size to form a pattern like a code. "Can you tell what it says?" Chloe tilted her head, studying the arrangement. "It's hard to tell with some of the books missing, but I think it spells out the word." She took out her notebook and began sketching the pattern. "T-H-E something. Chamber. The chamber," Ethan repeated. "Which chamber?" Their answer came from an unexpected source. As Liam reached for one of the books to examine it more closely, it shifted under his hand, revealing that it wasn't a book at all. It was a wooden box designed to look like a book spine. Inside, they found a leather-bound journal, its pages filled with Silas Blackwood's careful handwriting. "Here it is," Liam whispered, his voice filled with awe. "This is his personal journal." The journal was divided into sections, each addressing different aspects of Silas's life and work. But the section that caught their attention was titled The Preservation Project and dated from the summer of 1929. "I have spent the past months preparing for the inevitable," Silas had written. "The economic signs are clear to anyone willing to see them. When the crash comes, it will be swift and unforgiving. Therefore, I have taken steps to preserve not only my family's assets, but also the legacy of our accomplishments." The journal detailed Silas's creation of what he called the chamber, a secret room within the mansion where he stored valuable items, documents, and securities. The chamber was protected by a series of puzzles and locks designed to ensure that only the patient, intelligent, and truly deserving could access it. "The first key lies in understanding the foundation of knowledge," Edmund had written. "Those who seek only gold will find only dust. Those who value wisdom will find boundless riches." "The foundation of knowledge," Liam said. Silas was a man of letters. He valued knowledge and intellectual achievement. As they pondered the meaning, Chloe continued to explore the library. She had developed a talent for noticing details others missed, and there was something about the fireplace at the far end of the room that caught her eye. "Dad, look at this," she called. The fireplace was magnificent, carved from stone with ornate decorative motifs around the mantel. But what Chloe had noticed was that some of the decorative elements were not merely ornamental. Hidden among the carved vines and leaves were symbols that matched those they had found in the pantry. "It's another part of the puzzle," she excitedly declared. They sat on the dusty floor, in the dim light of Ethan's flashlight, and began to read. It was the diary of Eleanor, Silas Blackwood's wife. Every line of delicate handwriting confirmed Mrs. Vance's rumors. Silas, her brilliant but eccentric husband, had built a preservation chamber to hide the family's assets from the economic catastrophe he believed was imminent. But to enter it, they needed a special key, and that key had been separated into 3 pieces, hidden in the 3 safest places in the house, each protected by its own puzzle: the dining room, the library, and the master bedroom. The real treasure hunt had begun. The first piece, the dining room. They returned to the dining room, where a long table and porcelain dinnerware were still neatly arranged in the display cabinet. Ethan immediately thought of looking for secret compartments, but Chloe was drawn to the blue patterns on the plates. "These patterns, they're not the same," she murmured, taking each plate out and arranging them on the table. Each plate depicted a different scene, but as Chloe rotated them, she realized that the designs on the rims could be pieced together to form a continuous sequence of symbols. As she arranged them in what she believed was a story, a soft click echoed from the china cabinet. A small, almost invisible drawer at the base of the cabinet sprang open. Inside, resting on a faded velvet cloth, was a strangely shaped metal piece. The second piece, the library. They returned to the library, feeling as if they were on the right track. This time, Liam was the one to decipher it. The puzzle in the diary was a quote from Shakespeare's Hamlet. As a literature teacher, Liam recognized it instantly. The quote was not just a hint, but a code. Each word pointed to a bookshelf, a row, and a number. Following the directions, they found a loose brick right behind the cold fireplace. Liam carefully pried it out. Behind the brick was a small recess, and the second key piece lay snugly within. The third piece, the master bedroom. This was the most difficult challenge. The master bedroom was vast and empty, with only an old bed and a wooden music box on the windowsill remaining. This time, the puzzle was a musical score. Chloe, though she couldn't read music, had a sensitive ear. She recognized the melody hinted at in the diary, but the music box only played a short snippet and stopped. Ethan, with his logical mind, tinkered with it and discovered a series of small, adjustable gears on the underside of the box. He realized that this was not a musical puzzle, but a mechanical one. After nearly an hour of fumbling, turning the gears to match a sequence of numbers hidden in the music box suddenly played a complete, melodious tune. And when the music ended, a small secret compartment at the bottom of the box sprang open. The final metal piece lay there, gleaming in the twilight. They rushed to the main hall, placing the 3 metal pieces on the dusty table. They fit together perfectly, forming an intricate triangular key with small cog-like teeth on its edges. It leads to the basement. Beneath the library, Liam read from the journal, his voice trembling with excitement. They found the door leading to the basement, which opened into a dark, cold space, smelling faintly of damp earth. As they descended the stone steps, the key in Liam's hand began to vibrate gently. The closer they got to a smooth stone wall, the stronger it vibrated, and it began to emit a faint blue light. Liam brought the key closer to the wall. The light focused on a single point. There, a hidden lock, perfectly disguised as part of the stone, was revealed. With his heart pounding, Liam inserted the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. He took a deep breath and turned. A heavy, prolonged screech echoed through the basement. Dust fell. Before their eyes, a section of the stone wall slowly shifted inward, revealing a pitch-black corridor. They looked at each other, their eyes shining. They had done it. The door to Silas Blackwood's secret had opened. Chloe noticed the metal key had begun to vibrate gently in her hand. "Dad, it's moving," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Liam took the key, feeling the subtle vibration himself as he moved around the room. The vibration was stronger near a specific wall. "It's some kind of magnetic resonance," he said, his teacher's mind considering the possibilities. Silas must have embedded metal in the wall behind the entrance. They found the hidden mechanism right where the key's vibration was strongest. A small slot in the stone wall, cleverly disguised as a natural crack, fit the triangular key. As Liam turned it, they heard the ancient gears turn inside the wall. Slowly, a section of the wall rotated inward, revealing a narrow passage that disappeared into the darkness. "We did it," Ethan exhaled, his teenage skepticism completely forgotten. "We found Silas's chamber," Chloe added, her voice filled with awe. The passage was narrow and low, forcing them to proceed in single file. Liam led the way, his flashlight beam piercing the darkness ahead. The walls were lined with the same careful stonework as the basement, but these stones bore carved symbols similar to those they had found throughout the mansion. After what seemed like an eternity, but was probably only about 50 feet, the passage opened into a circular room. Liam's flashlight beam swept across the space, revealing something that took their breath away. The room was filled with wooden crates, metal filing cabinets, and glass display cases. But what immediately caught their attention was a collection of framed documents hanging on the walls, certificates, bonds, and what appeared to be securities from companies they recognized. Is this the treasure?" Ethan asked, a hint of disappointment in his voice. "Just a bunch of old papers." "Not necessarily, son," Liam said, picking up a stack of stocks. These could be very valuable. We found it. Chloe cheered, excitement overwhelming everything else. She jumped up and down, her shadow dancing on the stone wall. Are those things real? Ethan asked, his voice barely audible. Liam approached one of the display cases, his flashlight illuminating a collection of documents that made his hands tremble. Securities from companies that had survived the Great Depression and grown into modern giants. Railroad bonds that had matured decades ago. Investment documents representing wealth preserved by one man's foresight. "Dad," Chloe whispered, "how much do you think all this is worth?" Before Liam could answer, they heard a sound that chilled them to the bone, footsteps echoing from the passage behind them. Someone else was in the basement, and they were heading towards the room. "Quick," Liam whispered, "turn off the lights." Just then, a cold, smug voice echoed from the basement door, dampening their joy. "That's right, we found it." All three startled and turned. Alistair Crowe stood there, arms crossed over his chest, blocking the only exit. The friendly, polished smile they had seen before was completely gone. In its place was the expression of a wolf that had cornered its prey. He was not alone. Behind him were two tall men in black suits who looked far from friendly. "Crowe, how are you here?" Liam stammered, instinctively shielding his children behind him. "How did you know about this?" Liam demanded, instinctively moving closer to his children. "The same way you did. Research, patience, and a considerable respect for the old man's intelligence." Crowe's smile was cold. "Though I must admit, I didn't expect a substitute teacher to solve the puzzles as quickly as you did." "You were following us," Chloe said, her young voice filled with indignation. "Following your progress? Yes. It seemed more efficient than solving the puzzles myself when you were doing so well." Crowe stepped deeper into the room, his flashlight beam revealing more of the treasure around them. He picked up a stack of bonds, flipping through them as if they were his own. "These old papers, young man," he said, looking directly at Ethan, "are worth at least $200 million in today's value, perhaps even more. But now that you've found the chamber, our partnership has come to its natural end." "Partnership?" Ethan's voice cracked with adolescent anger. "We're not partners. This is our inheritance. Legally, perhaps, but practically, your children are playing with toys that you don't understand." Crowe took out his phone, its screen casting a blue light on his face. "Do you know what you've really found here?" Liam remained silent, but his mind was racing. The securities they had glimpsed, the bonds, the other documents, if they were real, they could be worth millions of dollars. But Crowe's presence here meant that others also knew about the treasure, and their family's claim might not be as secure as they had believed. "These are not just old papers," Crowe continued, approaching one of the display cases. Silas Blackwood was a visionary. When he saw the crisis coming, he didn't just hide his money. He invested in companies he believed would survive and thrive. Railroad bonds are now worth 50 times their original value. Stock in companies that became industry leaders. Government securities that have accumulated nearly a century of interest. "How much?" Liam asked quietly. "A conservative estimate, $500 million, possibly more, depending on the condition of the documents and current market valuations." The number hit Liam like a physical blow. $500 million, enough to change not just his family's lives, but the lives of everyone they knew. Enough to save the mansion, restore it to its former glory, and secure his children's future in ways he had never dared to imagine. "Of course," Crowe continued, "the value requires expertise, connections, and resources that, frankly, Mr. Thorne, you do not possess. The authentication process alone will take months. The legal work to establish clear ownership will take years. And that's assuming no one challenges your claim." "Who would challenge it?" Liam asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Silas Blackwood had other relatives, business partners, who might claim they were owed money. The state authorities might argue that abandoned property, after a certain period, becomes public property. Crowe's smile widened. "But we have the inheritance documents," Chloe said defiantly. "Mr. Carlos left the house to Dad." "But this property belongs to my family," Crow corrected. "Nothing in those documents says anything about hidden treasure." A good lawyer could argue that the treasure was never a legitimate part of the inheritance. Liam felt the weight of Crow's words. The developer was right. They had found the treasure, but claiming legal ownership might be harder than solving Silas's puzzles, and fighting a legal battle would require resources they did not have. However, Crow continued, "I am willing to make this simple for everyone. I will buy your claim to the property and everything in it for $5 million cash. No legal battles, no authentication delays, no risks." "5 million, Ethan repeated. "It's a generous offer considering the alternatives. You walk away wealthy. I handle the complications. Everyone wins." Liam looked around the room at the magnitude of what they had discovered. $5 million was more money than he had ever imagined possessing. It would solve every problem they faced, provide security for his children, and allow him to live comfortably for the rest of his life. But something about Crow's offer felt wrong. The developer was too eager, too prepared with legal arguments and counteroffers. He had known about the treasure before they found it, which meant he had been researching it for some time. If he was willing to pay $5 million without authentication, the treasure was probably worth much more. "We need time to think about it," Liam finally said. "Of course, but don't take too long. News of discoveries like this tends to spread quickly, and the longer you wait, the more complicated things will become." Crow turned to leave, then stopped at the entrance to the room. "Oh, and Mr. Thorne, I would be very careful about who you tell about this discovery. There are people who would do almost anything for this kind of money." After Crow left, the family stood in stunned silence. The treasure room, which had seemed like a miraculous discovery just minutes before, now felt like a dangerous and complicated burden. "Dad," Chloe said softly, "I don't trust him." "Neither do I," Liam replied. "But he's right about one thing. This is more complicated than we thought." They spent the next hour exploring the room more thoroughly, documenting what they found with photos and notes. The treasure was even more extensive than Crow had indicated. In addition to securities and bonds, they found rare coins, jewelry, and historical artifacts valuable to museums and collectors. But mixed among the treasures were personal items that revealed the human side of Silas Blackwood's story: family photographs, letters from his children, and a journal documenting his final days in the mansion. The last entry, dated just 2 days before the family's disappearance, was particularly moving. "I have done all I can to preserve our legacy," Silas had written. "The chamber is complete, the clues are in place, and the treasure is secured. Should my fears prove true, and we must leave quickly, I pray that one day someone worthy will find what we have hidden. May they use it wisely, and may they remember that true wealth lies not in gold and silver, but in family and the courage to face an uncertain future." "He's like you, Dad," Chloe said over his shoulder. "What do you mean?" "He cared more about his family than money, just like you." Liam felt a sting of tears. Silas Blackwood had faced impossible choices similar to his own. How to protect his family, how to preserve their future, how to make decisions that would echo through generations. As they prepared to leave the room, Liam made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the treasure's value and the complications it represented, he felt a strange sense of peace. Silas Blackwood had left them more than money. He had left them a test of character, a challenge to prove themselves worthy of the gift they had received. "We are not selling to Alistair Crow," he declared. "But Dad," Ethan protested, $5 million is less than we deserve and more than we need," Liam interrupted. Silas Blackwood did not hide this treasure for someone to sell it to the highest bidder. He hid it for someone who would use it to build something better. "What are we going to do?" Chloe asked. Liam looked around the room one last time, at the grandeur of what they had inherited. "We are going to learn the true value of this treasure, and then we are going to decide how to use it to honor Silas's legacy and secure our family's future." As they climbed back to the main floor of the mansion, Liam felt a weight settle on his shoulders. Not the burden of poverty that had weighed him down for so long, but the responsibility of wealth and the choices that came with it. Behind them, the room waited in the darkness, holding secrets that could change their lives forever. The question was whether they had the strength and wisdom to handle what they had found. The truth was revealed 3 days later by an unexpected visitor who changed everything they thought they knew about their discovery. Margaret Julian, the elderly librarian who had helped them research Silas Blackwood, arrived at the mansion carrying a thick manila envelope filled with documents. "I've been thinking about your treasure hunt," she said, settling into a chair in the mansion's living room. "There was something about Alistair Crow's interest in this property that bothered me, so I did some more research." Liam poured tea from a thermos while his children gathered around Mrs. Julian, their faces filled with eagerness and curiosity. They had spent the previous days cataloguing the contents of the chamber and researching the legal implications of their find, but progress had been slow and frustrating. "What did you find?" Chloe asked. Mrs. Julian opened the envelope and spread several documents across the coffee table. "I found out who Alistair Crow really is and why he's so interested in this mansion." Mrs. Julian held a stack of old documents in her hand. I found something," Mrs. Vance said, ignoring Crow's sarcasm. She extended the yellowed papers to Liam. "Alistair Crow, he's not just a property hunter. He's a descendant of Thomas Crow, Silas Blackwood's former business partner. The Crow family always believed that their ancestor was the brains behind the inventions, but that Silas had outmaneuvered him and taken everything. What's more," Mrs. Julian continued, pulling out another document. "According to this 1,925 will I found in the district archives, Silas Blackwood left specific instructions about what was to happen to his estate if he died without direct heirs." Liam leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What kind of instructions?" "The will states that if Silas died without children, or if his direct descendants could not be identified, the property would pass to the lineage of his sister, Margaret. But there was a condition. The inheritance would only be valid if the heirs could prove they were worthy of the Blackwood legacy." "What does that mean?" Chloe asked. Mrs. Julian smiled, clearly enjoying the dramatic moment. "It means they had to solve Silas Blackwood's puzzle and find the hidden treasure, just as you did." The implications hit Liam like a physical blow. As they absorbed this information, Liam's phone rang. It was Alistair Crow, and his voice held a new urgency. "Mr. Thorne, I hope you've had time to consider my offer. I'm willing to go up to $10 million, but I need an answer today." "Why the rush?" Liam asked. "Because I've learned that my legal claim to the property is stronger than I initially let on. I tried to be generous, but if you force me to go through the courts, you'll end up with nothing." Liam looked at his children, then at Mrs. Julian, who was shaking her head emphatically. "I need more time to think. I'm afraid time is something we don't have. I'll be filing a petition with the probate court tomorrow morning. After that, the property will be tied up in legal proceedings for years." Then he hung up, to everyone's astonishment. "There's more," Mrs. Julian continued, pulling out a thick folder of documents. "I found Silas's original blueprints for the mansion, not the ones filed with the city, but his personal architectural drawings." She spread the blueprints on the table, and Liam immediately saw what had captured her attention. The mansion's layout was far more complex than they had realized. Secret passages connected every room. Hidden chambers existed throughout the structure, and the basement extended far beyond what they had explored. "The entire mansion is a puzzle," Mrs. Julian explained. "Every room, every hallway, every architectural detail was designed to hide and protect the treasure. It's not just a house, it's a giant puzzle box, like a mechanical puzzle," Chloe said, her artistic mind grasping the concept instantly. "Exactly, and according to these blueprints, the chamber you found was just the beginning. There are more treasure rooms, each more difficult to access than the last." Ethan studied the blueprints, his mathematical mind analyzing the complex geometry. So the chamber we found is what Silas called the first vault, Mrs. Julian concluded. There are at least 3 more, each containing different kinds of treasure. How much are we talking about? Liam asked. Based on these inventory lists I found, the total value could be close to $1 billion. The number was so large it seemed meaningless. Liam had grown up in a world where $1,000 was a significant sum, where $50,000 would solve most problems. $500 million was beyond his comprehension. But here's the crucial part, Mrs. Julian continued, pulling out one final document. Silas's will contains a specific clause about the treasure. It states that ownership belongs to whoever can complete the entire puzzle, not just finding the first chamber, but accessing all the secret vaults. So finding the first chamber doesn't mean we own the treasure? Liam asked. It means you're in the race. But according to Edmund's instructions, the treasure belongs to whoever can prove they understand the true nature of wealth by completing his final challenge. What's the final challenge? Chloe asked. Mrs. Julian smiled. That's what we need to figure out. But I suspect it's not just about solving puzzles, but about proving that you will use the treasure wisely. Suddenly, a sound from outside broke the stillness that enveloped them. All 3 startled and turned. Nosy old woman, Crow said loudly, his expression annoyed. Crow interrupted Mrs. Julian, a distorted smile spreading across his face. The wise old woman. Finally, someone who knows part of the story. He turned to Liam, his eyes filled with false arrogance. My family, the Crows, were brazenly dispossessed. My ancestor, Thomas Crow, was the great mind behind the inventions, the ideas that created this fortune. Blackwood, he was just a cunning puppeteer, stealing the efforts of others. We were raised to believe this was our stolen legacy. He clenched his fists. This isn't greed, Thorne. This is about reclaiming justice, restoring honor to a ruined family. Mrs. Julian shook her head vigorously, her voice filled with indignation. No, that's a lie that's been told over and over through generations of Crows. Historical records clearly show that Thomas Crow tried to usurp Silas Blackwood's inventions but failed. Blackwood was the true genius, and he protected his assets from those who wanted to plunder them. Crow brushed off Mrs. Julian's words. Old news. Anyway, that doesn't matter now. He turned back to Liam, his gaze sharp as a knife. What matters is, we've known about the existence of these vaults for a very long time. My family tried to find them, but none of us were genius enough to solve the eccentric old man's puzzles. He sneered. So, we waited. When you, a mediocre teacher, and 2 naive children, accidentally inherited and started to unveil the secrets, I saw my opportunity. You're just pawns doing the dirty work I couldn't do myself. Liam looked at Crow, his face hardening. He knew about everything from the beginning. He just couldn't open this door himself, so he let us do it for him. Mrs. Julian, seizing the opportunity, held up the old stack of documents. And most importantly, she said, her voice echoing through the basement, Silas Blackwood's will states very clearly, the entire estate will not belong to someone by blood relation, but to anyone who can complete his entire puzzle, thereby proving they are worthy of the legacy. Worthy? This senile old woman, don't bring your nonsense philosophies here. That so-called will is just a farce by a mad old man, a way to delude himself about his greatness. His gaze swept over the Thorne family as if they were just annoying obstacles, saying, this property was built on the blood and intellect of my ancestors. It belongs to the Crows. But I'm a reasonable man, Thorne. He paused, letting the silence add weight to his words. Give me the key. $5 million is still yours. Consider it a finder's fee, a bargain for a few weeks of fumbling in the dust, wouldn't you say? The air became thick. Crow's offer of $5 million still hung in the air, but now, everything had changed. This was no longer a simple property dispute. It had become a race against time and law to prove who was worthy of the true legacy. But the inheritance documents, Chloe protested. Mr. Carlos left the house to Dad. Carlos inherited the property from his uncle, who bought it from the bank after Silas's family disappeared. Mrs. Julian explained. But legal ownership of the house and legal ownership of Silas's hidden treasure are two different things. "What do we do now?" Ethan asked. "We finish what we started," Liam said, surprising himself with his determination. "If Silas designed this as a test, then we need to complete it. All of it." "Mrs." Julian said, "but if you can prove that you have completed Silas's full challenge, you will be in a much stronger position. According to his will, the treasure belongs to whoever proves they are truly worthy of it." "And how do we prove that?" Liam asked. Mrs. Julian smiled, retrieving the architectural blueprints. "We solve the rest of the puzzle, and we do it before Vincent Cross finds out what we are really looking for." Alistair Crowe was not one to make empty threats. He acted as swiftly as a viper. The very next day, a court vehicle pulled up to the mansion. A stern, uniformed officer posted a seal order on the rusty gate. Crowe had officially filed a lawsuit, accusing Liam of incompetence and lack of qualification to inherit, and demanding that the court temporarily freeze the assets until the case was resolved. Not stopping there, he cleverly leaked the story to the press. "Homeless family accidentally discovers $1 million treasure." Sensational headlines like these appeared everywhere. Local news vans began to lurk outside the gate, their long cameras pointed at the mansion like guns. Even worse, the court order gave the Thorne family exactly 48 hours to solve the remaining mysteries before they had to vacate the mansion. The pressure weighed on them like a rock. 48 hours to solve a puzzle that had existed for nearly a century. 48 hours to decide the fate of $200 million and their own family. The excitement of the adventure had vanished, leaving only fear and despair. Under that immense pressure, Ethan was the first to falter. He sat in the corner of the room, watching his father pace back and forth, mumbling about Silas's philosophy and the true meaning of legacy. He looked at his sister, still dreaming about puzzles. He saw them as unrealistic. Crowe was a shark, and his father was just a goldfish trying to swim in the ocean. They would lose. They would lose everything. And they would be back on the streets, but this time it would be worse than before. In a moment of weakness, while Liam and Chloe were studying the journal, Ethan secretly took out his phone. He found Alistair Crowe's number. His fingers trembled as he typed the message. "Mr. Crowe, it's me, Ethan Thorne. My dad will never agree, but I'm different. I know a few things in the journal you don't. Can we negotiate?" He didn't intend to betray them completely. He just wanted a safety net. Enough money to ensure that when everything collapsed, his family wouldn't have to start from scratch. He was just trying to be realistic. But Liam, with a father's intuition, noticed his son's unusual tension. When Ethan hastily put his phone away, Liam accidentally glimpsed the name Alistair Crowe on the screen. His heart stopped. That night, while Ethan was asleep, Liam did something he never thought he would do. He checked his son's phone. When he read that message, his world crumbled. This pain was worse than the contempt of his siblings, worse than Crowe's threats. This was a betrayal from the son he loved. "Why, Ethan?" The next morning, Liam held out the phone in front of his son, his voice trembling with pain and disappointment. "Why did you do that?" Ethan flinched, his face paling, but then fear quickly turned into defensiveness. "Because I had to," he shouted, tears of frustration welling up. "You keep chasing after fairy tale puzzles while we're about to be thrown out. Are you being realistic?" "I'm just trying to protect my family, doing what you should be doing." "Protecting the family by selling out the family?" Liam roared, his pain turning into anger. The confrontation pushed the family to the brink of collapse. Chloe stood between them, sobbing uncontrollably. It was in that darkest, most painful moment, looking at his fractured family, that a thought suddenly sparked in Liam's mind. Now, Silas Blackwood had created his treasure hunt for someone exactly like them, someone who would value the journey as much as the destination, someone who would use the treasure to build something better rather than simply hoard it. The mansion around them suddenly felt different, not just a building, but a living puzzle waiting to be solved. And somewhere within its secret rooms and hidden passages lay the key to their future. Liam looked at his children, seeing in their faces the same courage and intelligence that had brought them so far. "We will do this, and we will start by remembering what Silas wrote in his journal. True wealth is not measured in dollars, but in the courage to face an uncertain future and the wisdom to use what we have been given to help others." "Do you really think we can defeat Alistair Crowe?" Ethan asked. "I think we can prove we are worthy of Silas's legacy," Liam replied, "and sometimes that is enough." Outside, storm clouds gathered over Millbrook, and the mansion's windows reflected the darkening sky. But inside, the Thorne family was preparing for the challenge of their lives, a race against time, money, and legal troubles to claim a treasure more valuable than anything they had ever dared to imagine. The real test had only just begun. The master key was not a single object, but a concept woven throughout Silas Blackwood's entire design. As dawn broke over Millbrook, the Thorne family stood in the mansion's main hall, surrounded by architectural blueprints, photos, and notes representing weeks of intensive investigation. "It's not about finding another physical key," Liam said, his voice still showing the weariness from their overnight strategy session. "It's about understanding the pattern that connects all the puzzles." They had 48 hours. Alistair Crowe had made good on his threat to file legal documents, and his lawyers had obtained a temporary injunction, preventing the family from moving anything out of the property. But the order did not prevent them from exploring, and Mrs. Julian had found a loophole in the legal language, giving them 2 more days to complete their investigation. "The pattern is everywhere," Chloe said. Her sketchbook was filled with drawings revealing mathematical relationships between the mansion's decorative elements. "Every room has the same basic structure, a puzzle leading to a clue leading to a key, and a key unlocking the next level. But the final level is different," Ethan added, referencing the architectural blueprints. "According to these drawings, the main vault is not accessed by a physical key at all. It's opened by demonstrating an understanding of what Silas called the true equation of wealth." Mrs. Julian, who had barely slept during their marathon research, lifted her head from a stack of historical documents. "The master key," he murmured. He suddenly understood. Silas Blackwood had not just left material puzzles, he was testing their spirit. The master key to open the final vault was not an object. It was an understanding of his philosophy. True wealth is not money, but the ability to use it to build, to heal, to create a lasting legacy for the community. He found the final question inscribed on the last page of the journal, a question that determined everything. "What will you do with the treasure that will still be valuable in 100 years? Seeing her father's realization, seeing the tears of regret streaming down her brother's cheeks, Chloe ran and hugged them both. "We are a family," she sobbed. "We will do this together." Chloe's words were like an electric current, pulling Liam and Ethan out of the depths of anger and despair. They had wasted too much time. Now was the time to act. Instead of continuing to search for a physical key, they spent their precious remaining hours answering Silas's question. They sat gathered around the oak table in the library, forgetting to eat, forgetting to sleep. They did not plan to get rich, but to give back. They worked like a well-oiled machine, like a true family. Their bond, in those final hours, was the answer. The clock struck 8 a.m. on the final day. Crowe, along with his lawyer and the police, stood ready at the gate, prepared to evict them. The Thorne family stepped out into the main hall, the highest and widest space in the mansion. They carried no suitcases. They only carried a stack of papers. "We have the answer," Liam said loudly, his voice echoing through the empty hall, loud enough for the reporters outside to hear. He began to read aloud their plan, the plan to establish the Vance Foundation. He read about the classes, the scholarships, about transforming this place into a living legacy for everyone, not a private treasure for anyone. As he finished speaking, a loud clank resonated from directly beneath their feet. The entire marble floor of the main hall, with an astonishing mechanical mechanism that had been dormant for nearly a century, began to vibrate and slowly split in half. An intricately forged spiral iron staircase appeared, leading deep into a profound darkness. They had found it, the main vault. Their actions, their understanding, were the master key. The mansion doors burst open. Crow and the police stormed in, stunned by the sight of the staircase appearing in the middle of the hall. "Stop! All property here is sealed," Crow's lawyer yelled, his voice trembling slightly. But it was too late. From below the staircase, Chloe ran up, holding a wooden box. Inside, there was no gold or silver, but the most important document, Mrs. Julian had found while they were solving the final puzzle. It was the legal trust document that Silas Blackwood had established in 1929, kept in the safest place. Mrs. Julian stepped forward, took the document from Chloe's hand, and held it up. "According to this legal trust document," she declared, her voice ringing out clearly, "established by Mr. Silas Blackwood, there is an ironclad provision, automatically granting full management of the estate to anyone or any group that completes his final challenge, thereby fully nullifying all other legal claims, including from blood relatives." She looked directly at Crow. "The actions of the Thorne family have proven them worthy. This treasure belongs to them and to the community they will serve." Crow was stunned. His face changed from red to ashen white. He had lost. He had lost not because he failed to find the treasure, but because he had failed to understand its true meaning. He only saw money, while they had seen a legacy. 6 months later, the Walter Vance mansion was no longer an abandoned old house. It had been restored to its former glory, not with empty luxury, but with the laughter of children and the bustle of community activities. The Vance Foundation had become the heart of the town. Liam Thorne, in a simple shirt instead of his worn-out suit, had found his purpose as the foundation's director. He was no longer an unmotivated teacher. He was an inspirer. Chloe, the artist, now had an entire gallery to unleash her creativity and teach drawing to other children. Children like her, who found joy in simple things. Ethan, the practical son, had become the technological brains behind the foundation's entire operation, ensuring that Silas Blackwood's legacy was accessible to the whole world. He realized that realism wasn't just about money, but about creating sustainable value. His ex-wife's family no longer called him a money pit. Sophia and Daniel, who once mocked him, now awkwardly called to ask for donations for their company's charity events. They had to look up to the brother-in-law they once disdained. One afternoon, while reorganizing documents in the main vault, they discovered a final secret. Silas Blackwood was only a member of a larger secret society, a group of other wealthy inventors and philanthropists who had also created similar hidden legacies around the world, waiting for the worthy to discover them. Liam, Ethan, and Chloe looked at each other, their eyes sparkling with a smile. Their adventure had only just begun. They had found a treasure worth hundreds of millions of dollars, but the true treasure they had gained was even more valuable. It was purpose. It was the healing of a family, and it was the ability to create positive change in the world, a legacy that would last longer than any gold or silver.